Hello, beautiful perception trainers people. Welcome back to another video. And this video, I am really actually super excited to make. And I'm pretty usually excited to make these YouTube videos because whatever, it's just really fun. But this video especially is something that I know might come across a little bit triggering at first around the awakening path and all of these things. But this is something that has set me free on such a deep and profound level that I feel like not sharing it is like holding back something that's super important to be shared. So, and that is this. If you want to close notes too long, didn't listen, here's the message from this video. If your self-inquiry work is not leading you to a place of deeper and deeper self-compassion, of seeing that you have always done the best you could with what you had, that any mistake, any horrible thing that you think you've done was always done because you weren't getting what you needed, you didn't know how to get what you needed, you were being withheld from something that you needed, you were working from the best information you had at the time. And that learning new information, learning a new way, seeing how what you were doing before was harmful to yourself or to others, but not because you're a bad person, not because you were choosing to be a shithead, not because you wanted to hurt yourself or others, but because you literally didn't know any other way. And now that you see new, different ways of being, that to change feels liberating with no guilt and no shame for what you did before. Because you see the innocence in what you were doing before. And change is easy because change doesn't mean you're admitting that what you were doing before was horrible. Then it's not real self-inquiry. It's not complete. Because in the light of truth, you are always going, and this is why all religious people and mystical people and people who have had spiritual experiences describe God or awareness or truth as being love. People talk about their experience with aliens, and it's just this unconditional love. They talk about their experience with God, and it's unconditional love. They talk about their experiences on ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD or, I don't know, CBD oil at this point. They describe their fasting experiences and when they're in these altered states. And it's just everyone is telling the same story, that they connect with this feeling of just unconditional love. And the reason that that is the case is because this is how actual reality is. This is how actual reality works. We are little baby consciousness. But at the same time, on the planet Earth, at least in the context of Earth, in the context of the Earth human experience, which is the one we're having. And I think, again, let's just own that for a little while, that it's not a lower, awful, terrible experience. We are literally the highest consciousness on the planet Earth. We are the leading edge evolution of what, if we go from, right, the single-celled organism, the first little snippet of life that appeared on planet Earth, to what we are now, the level of complexity that we are now, the level of awareness, the fact that we have self-awareness. It's a miracle. We're miracles. Humanity is a miracle. For all of its unawareness, for all of its not knowing what we're doing, for all of our not understanding ourselves, not understanding how reality works, trying to do things, having all these different parts of our brains that do different things, right? And that are from different times in our history. having our brainstem, that's that reptilian brain that didn't understand how to do pattern recognition, so everything just got wired in. And if you've been watching my other videos, you can see we can look at, we still have that brainstem that just says threat equals physical survival equals do action equals that action gets programmed in as that saved my life, so just do that every single time I feel threat. And then now we have the mammal brain that has some pattern recognition and some storytelling. And so we can start to understand, right? We look at the elephants and the other mammals that have family systems, and they work together, and they have patterns, and they have societies, because that's that part of the brain. They've developed a higher level of consciousness. It's not just react. If that reaction worked, that's just what it is, because I don't have the capacity to actually understand the threat I was under and what to do about it. And mammal brain starts to have that. And then we have our frontal cortex. We have this higher reasoning, imagination, can make up things that aren't actually happening, which give us the capacity to create new things. Like, holy smokes, we can observe ourselves. And if that's not just the most profound thing, I don't know why you need ayahuasca. I don't know why you need a medicine journey to have a profound, I don't even know why we need to pretend we're aliens or anything like that. It's like, being a human is mind-bogglingly amazing, right? Like, we can observe ourselves. We're like the only thing on the planet that can do that. That's amazing. We can have a desire for something that doesn't exist yet, and we can create it. We can intentionally. So it's not just evolution taking its course. We're participating in evolution. We're actively participating in evolution. Right? That's incredible. So yeah, there are a lot of things about ourselves, about how our bodies work, about how nature works, about what the human being needs to thrive and to have a good life and to have joy and experience all of these things we want to experience. There's a lot that we still don't know. There's a lot that we're still unaware of that is causing us pain. Because again, the way that consciousness seems to function is we experience pain to the degree that we are out of alignment with how reality works. That is what we are capable of understanding. So humanity has a lot of pain because we are incredibly complex. Humanity has a lot of pain because we are incredibly complex, meaning our level of capacity of understanding how reality works and therefore aligning with how that reality works is many, 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 many times greater than all other living beings on this planet. We are, right, and again, if we understand kind of how math works and how evolution works, the pattern, we get 2 and then 4, and then we double it, so then it's 8, and then we double it so it's 16, and then we double it so it's 32, and so the steps between 2 and 4 is only 2, but then the steps between 4 and 8 is 4, and then the steps between 8 and 16 is 8. So by the time we get to this level of complexity, the step before us, and then the step that we are now, the evolution of what a human is so many orders of magnitude more complex than the last step, to make it almost look like the last step couldn't even be related to what we are, because it's so much less complex. But it's because we doubled it. So hopefully that kind of, that's a little bit of a metaphor, but another way to put it is that just the complexity that the human being is so much greater than everything else on the planet. Because again, everything else on the planet was evolving. It was getting more complex every single time it evolved. The the double-celled organism was twice as complex as a single-celled organism. And then the first little animals were many, many times more complex than the single-celled bacteria. And then a lion is how many more times complex than a cell. And then the human, again, being the kind of highest evolution that exists on the planet right now. We're so complex. And so that gives us, again, the capacity for awareness of how the greater reality works that is far beyond any other form of life on this planet. Right? Animals can't tell stories. They can't imagine something and create it. They are in reality in a lot of ways. So we can understand that, right? Like the animals eat their natural animal diet. They do their natural animal thing. They're running on instinct. They're in alignment with how reality works, but they're so much less complex than us. So their lifespans, how much of reality they're capable of understanding and aligning with, is far less than the human. So a lion has a lifespan of 30 to 40 years, I think, something like this. And then the mammal, so carnivores have a shorter lifespan than mammals, generally speaking, because a mammal is more complex. Mammals have a much longer lifespan than lizards because they're far more complex, meaning they are aligning with reality to a higher degree. Their family system, they're taking care of each other. They kind of, how an elephant works versus how a lizard lives their lives, they're both in alignment with what they're capable of cognitively. But the elephant lives a lot longer because it's more in alignment with how reality works. So again, we need to look at ourselves again, that humans have the capacity to be so in alignment with how greater reality works based on our base capacity to understand. But that doesn't mean we're at a place where we actually understand it yet. So that is the pain and the suffering of humanity, is that our actual awareness, our actual cognition, what we are aware of about ourselves and about reality, and how reality works, and how to live in alignment with the reality that we are capable of understanding, is far lower. What we're actually understanding right now is way below what we're capable of with just our hardware and our software. Thinking of it like that. We don't have the programs installed yet. The awareness of ourselves, the awareness of reality. So we are constantly breaking ourselves against reality as a humanity, experiencing pain, experiencing doing the wrong thing, thinking, this is what I want, this is how I'm going to go and try and get it. I don't get it, it doesn't work. I broke myself against reality. I experience pain when that happens. And again, we're kind of over philosophizing suffering, even pain and suffering. We're way overdoing it. The reality is we suffer because we're incredibly structurally complex. What we are capable of becoming and growing into. And so then the level of how actual reality works that we're capable of understanding and living in alignment with is incredibly high versus where we actually are cognitively right now as a humanity. What we actually understand, what we're capable of understanding, there's the gap. And that gap is the pain. That's the growth pain that humanity is in right now. That's the growth suffering that humanity is in right now. And bringing this back to the main point of the video, being if your inquiry work is not leading you to understand that you're completely innocent and that you've never done anything intentionally to hurt yourself or others, and even when it looks like you did something to intentionally hurt yourself or intentionally hurt others, that was still done from a place of ignorance, not a place of evil. Okay, and I understand a lot of people have a hard time with this. We really want to believe that there are evil people who know better, who know that they're being mass murderers, who are going out and doing things that are just objectively like no one could look at that and think that wasn't a harmful thing. You must be evil. You must be choosing to do a harmful thing because that thing is so obviously harmful. If we really get into their psychology, if we really understand, we're going to see every single time without fail, that person was traumatized, that person was injured in some way, maybe physically injured. They were their way of being and their way of perceiving themselves and their way of perceiving the world was so dramatically altered that their contact with true pain, which lets us know that we're breaking ourselves against reality, and our capacity to stop doing things that cause us pain or to learn from pain or all these things was so deeply messed up that they couldn't have done any different. And so now bringing it back to ourselves, we need to understand that we have always, 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 always done the best we could with what we had. We, as a humanity, have to stop being so hard on ourselves and looking at ourselves as people who know better, who aren't doing better. We need to stop looking at ourselves this way, and we need to start looking at others that way. And again, this doesn't mean that we then give everyone free rein to just hurt us, because we know that they're hurting, and a lot of empaths do this. We, as an empath, look at people who are in pain, look at people who are hurting themselves, look at people who are hurting us. We see their pain. We see that they're hurting. We see that they're not bad and they're not evil. They're causing themselves pain, they're causing us pain out of ignorance and out of trauma. This isn't just an excuse to let people traumatize you. This isn't just an excuse to let people do things to you that are objectively harmful because they're just hurting, they're not evil. That's not what this is about. And even I would, if you're struggling with you've never done anything wrong, you've always done the best that you could, you didn't hurt other people on purpose. If you're struggling with that idea, when you start to look out at others and you think of like narcissists and murderers and people who are just, you don't want to let yourself off of the hook of guilt and shame and feeling like guilt and shame. We need to have that. We need to be able to feel bad about ourselves for what we did in order to change. We need to know that what we did was wrong and that those negative feelings of guilt and shame are necessary. And if you think of letting yourself off the hook, you think of letting these other people off the hook, and then we're just making murder and narcissism and all child abuse and all these things okay. Don't think of it like that, because that's not what I'm saying. Okay? Eventually, you'll come to see that even those people, what's missing is self-compassion and self-love and everything they didn't get in their childhoods and the trauma and the abuse that they faced. That again, it's not ever going to be shame and guilt that gets us to a higher, better place. But if you just need to cancel thinking about other people for a little while, just so you can do this for yourself, I highly recommend that you do that. Because this is the key. This is the truth. This is the ultimate reality. Shame and guilt are always an illusion. Shame and guilt and regret are always, always, always illusion. Meaning you're not seeing the whole picture about yourself and why you did what you did and how you did not have any other better option at the time. Meaning, if your self-inquiry is leading you to have shame and guilt about yourself, it's incomplete. We can't stop there. Because the real reality that you're always going to discover, and this is what I've discovered for myself, and I'm telling you this from my personal experience, as someone who used to really believe that everything was my fault. If you've been watching my past videos since my little comeback, you'll see. If there was anyone on the planet who thought that everything was their fault, and that essentially lived their life from shame and guilt, that all of my problems were my fault, everyone else's problems were my fault, I should be doing better, I should be better, I should be stronger, I should be helping other people more, I should be helping myself more, I'm not doing enough. Everything that having such a deep awareness of that, everything that I ever did that hurt anyone else, that I got impatient with that person in line and I gave them not a smile and that probably ruined their day. Like literally to that level of awareness of how much I'm fucking up. I understand not wanting to let go of shame and guilt and believing that shame and guilt was keeping me in line. And that every single time I reminded myself, you're still not good enough, you're still not practicing what you preach perfectly, you're still having thoughts about how much you need to work, and when you're talking about self-love and you're not loving yourself, your mother still doesn't love you, you're still not helping her, you're not helping your sister enough, you're not helping other people enough. Literally, I understand. And the idea, again, that I was horrible, that I had done bad things when I started to become self-aware of how my childhood affected my behavior. Okay, I want to be very clear about this. It made me not a very good wife in a lot of ways. I blamed my husband for a lot of things that were not his fault. I micromanaged him. I had a closed heart to the degree that I was waiting for him to find out that he didn't like me so much that I wouldn't let him in. And I treated him disrespectfully for a long time in our relationship. I hurt him, and that's real. And I was codependent with clients. I gave way too much, had no boundaries, promised things that I couldn't deliver. I was not a perfect spiritual coach or life coach by any stretch of the imagination. I've made mistakes that have hurt me, right? I've done things with my diet. I've done things with with my lifestyle that definitely hurt me, that weren't heading in the direction of healing. And there were lots of messes I've made. And this is reality. This is really real reality. I've done things wrong. I've hurt other people. I've hurt myself based on my traumas and what I learned about what reality is and what I'm supposed to be and all of these things. So this is the key. How I have been able to see what I was doing in my relationship with my husband, and that it was all my fault. A lot of the things that we were doing, it wasn't him, it was me. Seeing what I was doing with my body that was incorrect. Seeing that what I was doing with my job was incorrect, and that I needed to change. How I got to a place where I was actually able to see that, to see what I actually needed to do differently, because that's the thing. The guilt and the shame and the awareness that what I'm doing is causing harm and isn't the right thing, that's one thing. But the awareness of what to do instead, what's the better thing, what's the alternative, that's actually an alternative, not just swinging the other way to do the opposite thing that's equally as destructive, because that's another thing, right? You can go from being codependent to being just completely independent, and that's not the answer. That's just swinging to the opposite. Go from this diet to that. I was vegan, that didn't work, so I'm just going to be carnivore. Okay. What if the answer isn't just the opposite of what you're doing? Because this is what I've discovered for myself. That the true answer to whatever it is that we're doing that's causing us harm and causing other people's harm, that's wrong. That's all that being wrong is. The true answer is always more complex than what I'm doing. So it's more complex than codependency. It's more complex than independence. It's interdependence. That's far more complicated. So it's not about just stopping doing the old thing. It's not about just regretting the mistakes that I'm making. It's not about being upset with myself. It's about admitting that what I'm doing is not complex enough. That there is a level of complexity that I'm missing. And when I have compassion for myself, so looking at the shame, looking at the guilt, and saying, okay, I see what you're doing. You're protecting me. And this is what I've learned about shame and guilt. It's a protective mechanism. Shame and guilt tells us that all of our pain is our fault. And we want that to be true. Number one, because if it's all of our fault, we feel like we can control it. Where the reality is, we were traumatized. Every single one of us were traumatized in our childhood. Every single one of us didn't get what we needed. Every single one of us didn't learn how to learn from real reality, didn't learn how to learn from our bodies, didn't learn how to accept who and what we actually are and grow that. We were taught and trained, all of us, to reject and deny our feelings, to be indoctrinated into this culture of death, to shut ourselves down, to not listen to ourselves, to not be ourselves. And we are in pain because of it. And that is not our fault. So that's the first thing. We are protecting ourselves from recognizing that literally how we were taught to view ourselves and reality is incorrect. Because admitting that to ourselves is so scary. Admitting that our caregivers didn't know what they were doing, like what we were talking about in the last video. Getting mad at them, getting mad at our caregivers for teaching us wrong, for teaching us how to hurt ourselves, for mirroring a way of life that isn't reality, that teaching us to hate ourselves and to reject ourselves and all these things fucked us. When we get mad at that, when we allow ourselves to have that, on the other side of that is like, okay, well, holy shit, so then what do we do now? Because even if that way of being hurt, and I could see that it wasn't right, we don't have an alternative. We don't know how to learn. We don't know how to find to do something different. So we hold on to the idea that it's just us that's wrong and bad, that it's me that's guilty, and all these things that I've done up until now was just me being stupid and me not knowing and me knowing better and not doing better. We blame ourselves and shame ourselves because it's easier to do that than to admit that, okay, if what I'm doing is wrong wasn't my fault, and it's wrong, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me, it means there's something wrong with what I was taught. How do I find the right answer? How do I know what to actually do? If it means that what I was taught was wrong, right? So this is why we shame and guilt ourselves. We want to believe that what we were taught was right, that what we're doing is right, and it's just us that's fucking it up. Because that is far easier to deal with than, no, what you were taught was wrong. You're doing it right. It's the wrong thing. Because then we don't know how to find the new thing. So that's the point of this video. Most of us in our self-inquiry are going to get blocked at shame and guilt to protect ourselves from seeing the reality that what we were taught is incorrect. That the way we're seeing ourselves and reality is incorrect. That it's not just that we have all the answers and we're just fucking it up. It's admitting to ourselves, we don't actually know the answer. The answer we were taught is incorrect. The answer we were taught made a big mess. What we have been doing based on what we thought was reality has made a whole big mess. We don't know how to find out what real reality is. And now we have to find real reality. We are disconnected from the very tools that would allow us to find real reality. Our feelings, pain and pleasure, and what that actually means. Because again, when we're in real, true insight, pain is just a messenger. It doesn't mean anything about us as a person. When I'm in pain, okay? So again, I eat something, I get a stomach ache. There's two ways of looking at that. I'm such an idiot. Why did I eat that? What's wrong with me? I know that I shouldn't eat that. I know that that was going to give me a stomach ache. You're such an idiot. Blah, blah, blah. Pain means you are wrong and bad. Alternate reality. Okay, I ate that thing. Maybe I did have some awareness that it was probably going to give me a stomach ache. So why did I do that? Well, if I really think about it, I had some really strong negative emotions that were coming up that I did not have the capacity to feel in that moment. I did not have the capacity to deal with the trauma that was going on around me, the pain that I was feeling. So I needed to eat something to distract myself, to give myself some pain in my body so that I could focus on fixing that, and that would make me feel powerful. Because this other pain that I'm feeling, I don't feel like I can make that better. I don't feel like I can make the emotional pain go away. So I gave myself some physical pain that I know that I created, that I can then uncreate, and it made me feel powerful, like I'm in control of the pain that I'm not actually in control of. Pain wasn't bad. Pain just showed me there are things I don't understand. And seeing every single time I've done something that was self-destructive, it had a positive intention. And so this is why I'm saying the big illusion is that we're ever doing anything to cause ourselves or other people's harm on purpose. We're not. We're always, always, always doing the best we can with what we have. So in your self-inquiry practice, this is what I want to offer you from this video. When you start to come up against your stories of shame and guilt, that needs to signal you that you're protecting yourself from seeing what you don't want to see, because it's showing you that what you were taught about the foundations of what reality is and how things work and what you should be doing and why you're in pain and how you're going to get out of it are incorrect. It's showing you that you don't actually know what the answer to your pain is. And that you're doing the best you can with what you have right now to get yourself out of pain. And whatever it is that you're doing, again, go back and watch the coping mechanisms, how my coping mechanisms were saving my life. It's literally whatever you're doing that's hurting yourself and hurting others right now is the best thing you know to do to deal with the pain that you're in from your childhood, where you were told you're not allowed to be yourself and where you were never taught how to learn from real reality. That is why you're in pain. That is why you self-sabotage. That is why you scapegoat. You couldn't trust your parents. They didn't know better than you. We have a whole world of elders that don't actually know better than us, that didn't actually know how to be healthy and happy and holy, and that we learned from them how to be out of alignment with reality. We inherited our pain from them, if you want to think of it that way, because that's all pain is. Pain just says, this is how reality is, this is the structure, you're doing something else. And that's not even a wrong or a bad thing in general. Pain is going to be a part of life forever because we get to create. We're always a part of the conscious creation, meaning we're always going to be going for something we don't understand. We're always going to have to be learning something new that we didn't know about before, about reality. And that's going to be pain, because we're going to do the wrong thing. We're going to think, okay, I know how to do this, right? Like a toddler, I want to climb up that rock, so they climb up the rock, and then holy shit, I don't know how to get down. They didn't even think about that, because how could they have? They had never climbed up there before. They didn't know. So then there's the pain of, oh God, I don't know how to get down. And then we have someone help us get down. And then now we can do it. And we learned. And now we have all these new skills. That's how humanity is supposed to work. And it's the shame and the guilt that keep us trapped in never learning. Because then again, we make it that we knew better and just didn't do better. We project the awareness we have now onto our old selves, as though we always knew what we know now, and we were just being stupid and making poor choices before. No, we have to stop doing that to ourselves. You didn't know what you know now then. And of course, if you had, you would have done something different. But you didn't. You did what you did because it was the best you knew then. And that is how you got here. You only know what you know now because you made the mistakes that you made in the past. Those mistakes were not roadblocks to you becoming aware of what you're aware of now. Those mistakes were the way you became aware of what you're aware of now. There was no knowing what you know now without those mistakes. So to regret that is to be out of alignment with reality. So like I say, the takeaway here is this: when your shame and your guilt come up, to start to practice actual compassion. What was my positive intention? What did I actually know at the time? When I did that thing that was hurting me or hurting others, what did I need that I wasn't getting? What did I think was true about reality that maybe wasn't true about reality? So like me putting up my walls around my heart with my husband. I was projecting my mother onto my husband. I didn't know I was doing that. I thought all people were like my mother because when I grew up, that's how I learned how people were. So I expected him to resent me for anything that I needed from him. I expected him to expect me to fix all of his problems, and if I couldn't, that he would hate me. I expected him to reject me in the ways that she rejected me. And I projected all of that onto him, and I was 400 steps down the path of reacting to him as though he was her when he wasn't. So then when he reacted to me in ways that didn't align with that, my brain just didn't understand, and I would discombobulate everything. And that's how I learned that when something feels like shit, it isn't true. That my perception of reality was completely wrong because it hurt so bad. And again, that wasn't my fault. When I got curious of why do I believe this? Why am I living this way? What am I doing this for? It was always, well, this was how you were taught. This is actually what happened. This is how it used to actually be. It's not like that anymore. Or now that you're not a child anymore, you can change it. You don't have to be in relationships with people like that anymore. You don't have to think about yourself like that anymore. You don't have to think about life like that anymore. But you have to be willing to have compassion for yourself first of how you got here to be able to change it. So that's what I've learned. That in order to actually learn, grow, change, evolve, and expand, the only way is to feel safe. And the only way to feel safe is to feel loved. And the only way to feel loved is to say, you're good. You're doing what you're doing for a good reason. What do you need? What are you not getting? Why are you doing this? From an actual place of compassion and softness and true curiosity. And then, like I say, that finding that more complex answer of what is the actual thing I need to be doing comes from that. When you start to really understand why you're doing what you're doing, you'll understand the need that wasn't getting met. You'll understand the false reality that you were in. And then the complex, true answer will become apparent to you. So people think that's a mystical experience. It's really not. It's just your awareness being able to expand out of fear. That's all it is. Because we can't learn, grow, change, or evolve, or expand when we're in a state of fear. Compassion. So if your self-inquiry is not leading you to complete, oh, I see why I did that. I'm not wrong and bad, and I can change without that meaning that I was wrong and bad, it's incomplete. Compassion. You have a good reason for everything you've done. Start with that. Why did I do it with compassion? Okay? And if you want more from me, you can find me in the Mystery School, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. It's all in the description box below. And we'll keep talking about this stuff in later videos. Have an awesome week.